Well, he's here. The Orange Man made it across the border, and let's be real, there was no realistic way Canada could deny him entry. Blocking a tantrum prone manchild like Trump would have created more problems than it solved. Still, you have to admit, watching him get turned away would have been hilarious. But right now, we're watching Danielle Smith look at Donald Trump with the same wide eyed admiration Melania once gave Justin Trudeau. This moment says way more than it should. And when have we ever seen Melania smile like this before? And speaking of smiles, stick around to the end. I've got two clips of Donald that are guaranteed to put one on your face. Jokes aside, he's here. And so are his 6 Osprey helicopters flying him straight into Kananaskis. It's no secret that a lot of Canadians, myself included, aren't exactly thrilled about his visit. Just yesterday, protests broke out at U.S. embassies across the country, Canadians making it clear what they think of the orange guy. Let's take a look.
Representing different causes taking to the streets of Calgary as the G7 gets underway in Kananaskis. Demonstrators rallying Sunday at Municipal Plaza right in front of Calgary City Hall, one of 3 designated demonstration zones in the city. Officials say 2 of those 3 zones in Calgary and an additional one in Banff have the ability to carry demonstrations to the leaders in Kananaskis.
I think it is a fantastic idea, most particularly because they're not permitting demonstrations in Kananaskis.
I'm here because I know Trump's at the G7, and he seems to be under the illusion that Canadians want to become part of be a 51st state, and I'm here to tell him that no, we are not.
We spoke with Douglas Chudley last month when he attended a community informational session about security planning for the G7. At the time, he said he would consider using one of the designated demonstration zones, and he ended up doing so Sunday.
I'm really glad we're back on the street, and I'm glad we're speaking up.
Several roads in downtown Calgary were temporarily closed as demonstrators moved from City Hall onto the streets, with police estimating about 400 people participating. Now, there's a bit of space here where I'm at on this roadway right now where demonstrators are protesting, and that is because that someone from that parkade over there has actually thrown some eggs onto the street here where demonstrators are protesting. For those who protested Sunday, some say that as the G7 continues, they may be back protesting over the next couple of days.
Planning on going out to Banff, we just wanted to welcome President Zelensky to Canada, and we're very happy that Prime Minister Carney invited him.
The turnout in Calgary was solid, and I wouldn't be surprised if Banff sees even more protests in the coming days. With President Zelensky now at the G7, invited by Mark Carney, things just got a lot more interesting. But I doubt Trump will go off on him this time. He's not on home turf. There's no J.D. Vance hovering around being a little prick, and Zelensky's got global backing here. Now, let's head to Vancouver, where protests erupted outside the U.S. Embassy.
Large-scale protests took place across North America opposing Donald Trump's policies and his military parade in Washington, D.C., which also coincides with the president's birthday. Here in Vancouver, outside the U.S. consulate building, hundreds of protesters from both sides of the border joined in.
This stood out to me. It wasn't just Canadians protesting Donald this weekend. Americans joined in too. It's important to remember, not everyone south of the border supports him. The massive turnout at the No Kings protest on Saturday made that clear. Millions showed up, and their message was loud. Let's hear what these Americans in Vancouver had to say.
I'm on a cruise with my family in Alaska, and I was glad that we got here off the ship in time to protest today.
I'm actually visiting from North Carolina, USA, and so my family and I are very against everything that Donald Trump, Elon Musk, the U.S. government has been.
I need to pause here for a moment, because this matters. The 2 Americans who just spoke, they're just as frustrated with the political chaos as we are, and it's a reminder that not everyone in the U.S. supports what's happening. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There are millions who didn't vote for Trump, and many of them feel stuck. I'll admit, sometimes I let emotion take over and paint with a broad brush. But hearing voices like theirs reminds me to stay grounded. So yes, we stand firm on our boycott. But we also stand with those Americans still fighting for a better path forward. Let's keep going.
Protesters were calling out the Trump administration's attacks on Canadian sovereignty, the heightened tensions in the Middle East, and the U.S. government's controversial ICE raids.
Stop this theater in Los Angeles with the troops and the Marines. You are out of your mind, and it's going to get somebody killed.
My brother is demonstrating this morning in Torrance, California. He says it's the third demonstration he's been to.
Trump's deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles in response to protests against immigration raids and deportations has sparked outrage and instilled fear. Sue Haley was born in the U.S. but has lived in B.C. since the 70s. She says she's worried for her family's safety south of the border.
Stick to what he said about taking out criminals, but not hard-working, law-abiding, tax-paying people.
Many Americans who made the trip across the border say the relationship between Canada and the U.S. will likely never be the same again.
I'm not sure where the future is going from here, but I don't want y'all to be our 51st state.
Other anti-Trump protests were held at Jackpool Plaza, as well as the Vancouver Art Gallery with a similar turnout and messaging.
It's rare to hear this from an American on TV. Someone saying clearly that Canada doesn't need to be the 51st state. Honestly, I can't recall hearing that on any mainstream outlet. Usually, it's just businesses begging us to come back, saying we secretly love the US and will return eventually. So credit to this woman for cutting through the noise and keeping it real. Now, let's head to Toronto, where another round of Trump protests took place over the weekend.
People power! Who's got the power? We got the power!
In Toronto, a similar protest took place outside the U.S. consulate. Hundreds gathered as part of the No Tyrants protest movement against the Trump administration.
I didn't think growing up as a Gen Z person that my rights would be threatened in America during my lifetime. I assumed I would have to fight for the rights of others, but we are seeing tens of millions of American citizens' rights actively being taken away.
I've been visiting the States for 60 years. I've always felt welcome. I've always felt safe, but not anymore. And the reason is that the American administration no longer respects and upholds the American Constitution.
But the arc of history bends towards justice. They can't deal with that. Our job, collectively, is to keep bending towards justice. There are more of us that can bend this bar than those are trying to bend against it. This is why we're here, and there's no doubt we will win, because the arc of history bends towards justice.
Organizers say the rally was a rejection of what they call authoritarian actions by the U.S. president.
If this past weekend made anything clear, it's that Canadians are fed up. We took to the streets, just like our neighbors down south, but with a message that's uniquely ours. Our sovereignty is not for sale, and it's not up for negotiation. Canada is a sovereign nation. We are independent from the United States, and we've reached a moment in history where we have to stand firm and defend that. Now, what's my message to you beyond Trump is an idiot? It's this. We fight for Canada, not just with protests, but with pride, unity, and refusal to be pushed around. And yes, there are Americans who stand with us. I respect that. But they've got work to do in their own house before we even think about crossing the street again. If this video resonated with you or gave you something to think about, a like and subscribe goes a long way in helping the channel grow. And now, I leave you with what might be the saddest, most embarrassing parade I've ever seen. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.